Okay, so finally the time has come for us to be able to solve these quadratic equations, which means we're not going to be messing with the expressions as much anymore. That was just an exercise to get you ready for this part. So if you recall, we've been talking exclusively about what makes a standard form for a quadratic expression, and we kept on trying to get you ready for this point by saying, hey, this was a quadratic expression. If it was equal to 0, that would be more of the standard quadratic equation form. This whole side to the left is equal to 0, so 4x squared plus 4x minus 168 is equal to 0. I know that A equals 4, I know that B equals 4, and I know that C equals negative 168. Um, let's go through and handle it by factoring right away before you start getting confused. We know that we normally like to be positive 1, so if it's not, we'll divide it by whatever number's there. And then we divide the other terms of the expression by this, but now we're working with an equation, so we don't just divide the terms here, we also have to go and divide the other side of the equation by, yep, you guessed it, exact same thing. So 4 divided by 4 is 1. 4 divided by 4 is 1 again. And negative 168 divided by 4 is, let's see, that would be negative 42. But what's 0 divided by 4? Just that way I don't have to have people doubting me. Here, look, here's a graphing calculator. Let's get back to the home screen. Clear off our screen. 0 divided by 4 is going to be 0. So there we go. So let's not beat around the bush. It's just something that you've got to remember. 0 divided by any number is going to be 0. Now, how can we actually factor this out? We're used to doing this already. You've probably done it so often, you're thinking I'm going incredibly slow, but hey, to make it legible, sometimes you've got to go slow. X times x is going to get us x squared. 42. 42 is our term, so we've got, let's see here, 1 and 42. That's a pair of factors. 2 and 21. I want to say it's 3 and 14. If I make a mistake on that, hey, I'm human. And how about 6 and 7? Okay. So if I multiplied any of these sets, it's going to get me 42. If I want to have a negative 42, one of these numbers, doesn't matter which one of these numbers has to be negative. But when I add a negative and a positive number together, I need to have positive 1 left over. That's not going to happen. Not going to happen here. Not going to happen here. You know what? If this is a negative 6 and that's a positive 7, I'll get the positive 1 that I need. So it's x minus 6, x plus 7. And that's the point that you're used to. So everything after this point is rather mundane. Nothing completely new except for the equals 0 is there, and we had to divide 0 by 4, and it still stayed 0. Here's the last part of how we solve. Let's have this broken up into two parts. X minus 6 equals 0, and x plus 7 equals 0. So plus 6, yep, x is going to equal 6 for one of the solutions. But you know what? We're going to have two possible solutions, and this happens a lot with quadratic equations. And x is going to equal negative 7. So there's my solutions for this quadratic equations, 6 and negative 7. Let's go through and actually work on this one right here. Just because this is an x does not mean that we would treat it any differently. So let's make this into a positive 1 for a. But that means I've got to divide b by 8, and I've also got to divide c by 8. But wait, I also have to divide the 0 by 8 on the other side of the equation to keep the balance of the equation. So k squared minus 3k plus 2 equals 0. What's my factors for 2? Not very many. It's 1 and 2. It needs to be positive, but I need to get a negative 3. That means I'm going to have to be adding a negative 2 and a negative 3. So it's k minus 1 times k minus 2 equals 0. So k minus 1 equals 0. k minus 2 equals 0. See, this is not too hard, is it? We take the binomials, we split them up, have them both equal to 0, and then we just go and solve. Well, hey, k equals 1, k equals 2. Let's kind of take this back here. Yeah, I know the lessons how to solve quadratic equations by factoring, but let's take a look about how you could actually pull out a graphing calculator and make this work. See, y equals 4x squared plus 4x minus 168. This is pretty much like a y right here. When y equals 0, this line is going to be touching the x-axis someplace. Let's go through and actually hit graph and see what happens. So we've literally taken this part of the quadratic equation and graphed it, and you know what? It's going to touch -7 on the x-axis, and it's going to touch +6 on the y-axis, where the y value for that plotted point, remember this was -7 on the x-axis, but that means it's 0 on the y-axis, and it's equal to 0, so y is 0. And it's also, hey, it's +6 on the x-axis where y is 0. So when we factored it, it told us 6 and -7. And when we graph it, it told us 6 and -7 is where this is equal to 0 on the x-axis. So hopefully this is starting to make a little bit of sense about quadratic equations. Have a lot of different ways that you can solve it, a lot of different ways that you can make sense of it. But as far as factoring, pretty much it was baby steps what we were doing before, and now we're just taking it to the next step. Let's go through and show you how we could actually check this one right here. So let's pull our calculator back up here. Let's get back to our y equals screen so we can plot some things. Let's clear that out, and instead of using k, we're going to use x. So 8 alpha x raised to the second power. And you notice it's got a little right arrow sign there, meaning that if I want to get out of the exponents, I click off to the right. Now I'll say minus 24k, but in this case it would be x, 24x plus 16. And now if I hit graph, if we're correct, what it will be is it will hit at 1 and 2. Those are the two places on the x-axis that it hits. So let's go see. It's coming in nice and slow. Whoop, and there it dove down into it. Let's take a look at this feature on there. If you see 1 for the zoom box, you can actually go and do this, and you move your cursor to where you want to start, and you click the enter button. Let me get that ink off there. There we go, enter. And it looks like nothing happened, but really what that did is that made it a starting point. So now you can open up the box, and when you've got the box how you want it, you just hit enter, and what happens is it zooms in and lets you see it. There's +1, there's +2. That was the two values that we were expecting to hit. The y-axis is at 0 right there when it's coming through and touching the x-axis. So y was 0 when it touched at 1 on the x-axis, and y was 0 when it touched at 2 on the x-axis. Two examples, two very detailed examples. This should be enough to get you started, enough to let you be able to start asking questions. And I will have this online, and watch it again if you need to, and email me questions if you have to. Good luck.